Thank you. So today is a little emotional for me because today I actually kissed my daughter goodbye, hopefully for now and not for forever. And I put her on a plane to Atlanta to live with her father because she has been experiencing a lot of mental health issues that I have not been able to help her solve. And so I thought it was interesting because when I named this, I said, oh, I'm gonna name it I Don't Like My Kid. But I love my kid. And I remember a few years ago, the first time that my mom, it's not the first time that my mom called me, it was the first time that I realized that my mom, who loves me dearly, doesn't actually like me. Like if we weren't related, we would not be friends. And I remember her calling me and she was very casually, hey honey, how are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm good, except for, and before I could finish my sentence, she was like, oh, that's great. So, and I remember just stopping and I cut her off. And I said, you are not gonna middle child me right now, okay? I said, you asked me how I was doing and you didn't even stop to listen. And she got quiet and she was like, yeah, I did that. I apologize. She was like, well, I probably shouldn't have called because actually I'm really busy right now. I was like, I said, what are you busy doing? And she was like, well, my show is on. And I was like, oh my God, this woman does not like me. And it brought back this like flood of memories that I had growing up as a child because I couldn't quite name it. Like, I know she loves me. She checks on me regularly. Ultimately, we have this great relationship. If I need her, I can call her. I don't have hesitancy or fear or apprehension or any of those things. But something there has always just been off. And it was the first time that I realized that you can love someone and actually not like them. Like, what do you do with that? And in that realization, I actually realized that I love my daughter and I actually don't like her. It's like I'm repeating the cycle. And some of it is, you know, I'm not into anime, but she absolutely loves it. So when she comes home and she wants to go on and 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 on about the characters that I have no clue who she's talking about, it's in those moments that I'm looking at her and I can remember that my mom loves me, but she doesn't like me. And I love her, but I don't actually like her. And there's nothing that we have in common, really. We don't like the same characters, the same movies, we don't like the same activities. I like the outdoors, she likes the indoors. I like live concerts and she likes to watch YouTube. She likes anime and I like Marvel. It's just not the same. And so we struggle to make that connection. And I thought, somehow as a mom, that's like a really horrible thing to say because you kind of think that your kids are supposed to be a part of your tribe. But what happens if they're not? And how often have we experienced relationships on either side where we realize that we love someone, but we actually don't like them? Or how often have we experienced having someone love us, but not like us? And I remember being in an intimate relationship with my two little ones with their father. And one day realizing how venomous he was towards me. And he did a lot of loving things, but he also did a lot of things that say he doesn't like me. And so how do we start to bring those two things together? And here's the spoiler alert, I don't actually have a solution for this, okay? I'm giving you some thoughts because I actually started to do some research on this. Like I started to look up, how do you love someone when you don't like them? And most of that information was geared toward intimate relationships because you kind of have the ability to walk away from them, right? You love your spouse, but maybe you don't like them, you've grown apart some kind of way. And there's you have an option, you can leave, right? But when it's like your child, that option, you don't get the option to walk away from that situation. And what I found was that there really wasn't any information about that. But how often have we experienced that? And what happens if we've been on the receiving end of someone who we can tell has to be in our life, but actually doesn't like us? How many of us have grown up as children and just knew something was off with someone who had to be in our life, but they didn't really have a connection to us? And we're not taught how to deal with that. And I'm still struggling with how to deal with that. And I don't know that I will ever know the answer, but here's a couple of things that I learned. One is that my research only led me to Jesus. Quite literally, it said pray and hope that Jesus will help you mend that brokenness that's in that relationship. And I felt like that wasn't an adequate answer. I think the hard part is that relationships, like the ideal situation in a relationship, is when you have both love and like. I love you and I like you. So I enjoy our time together. We have a connection, we have a bond, we have something that makes that relationship easy. And even when those relationships can become hard, my love or my like for you, our connectedness, the things that we might enjoy doing together, give us a space and a bridge to help bring those two things together that maybe can overcome some hurts or some challenges or things like that even as we grow. How do you navigate love without like? So here are the things that I have come up with. One is with grace. I think you have to give a little bit of grace on both sides, because if you're experiencing that, they're probably also experiencing that. And teaching our children about grace is really important, because what I've recognized that a lot of adults don't actually have grace for each other or for themselves. And so teaching that at an early age when you make that connection can be really wildly important to the development, to a healthy emotional development, is grace for someone or yourself. I also think that we have to have those relationships with honesty. And like, not to say, hey kid, I don't like you, but maybe to acknowledge that we don't share similar interests. And what does that mean for us in this relationship? And how do you allow for another person to help navigate that space with you to determine where there might be some commonalities, or how you can validate them in a way that doesn't feel like you're neglecting them or their needs or their wants? I also feel like with boundaries. Like, you can't talk to me for an hour and a half about anime. It just won't work. It won't work for you. It won't work for me. I'm not listening. You're going to feel after the end of an hour and a half talk that I haven't heard you, and you're right. So maybe you give me the 5-minute spiel, and we connect you with someone who actually has that interest, and you can have an engaging conversation. And how, as a parent or someone who is in your space who loves you, can connect you with someone who shares interests that you share that maybe I don't share, so that you can feel heard and respected in that space. But you also don't hold an expectation of me that I just won't live up to. I also think with redirection. How do we then take what we know is not working and help find a pathway to make it work? And the last thing is never with neglect. I recognize that I may be involved or must be prepared for spaces and conversations and times and moments that just aren't going to be comfortable, that might be boring the shit out of me, and that I'm just not going to like. But I still have to navigate that space without being neglectful, and then take the time to be introspective and think about how I can help create boundaries, redirect, have grace in those moments. But what I can't do is have neglect, because the one thing that I've recognized even in myself and in my own journey with dealing with my relationship with my mom has been that while she might not have meant to neglect me in certain areas, so my mom is a wonderful mom, while she may not have meant to neglect me in certain areas, those things have caused me and created issues for me that I then have to deal with as an adult. And how often are we dealing with adults who have experienced something that has created a blockage in them that they don't even know where it came from? Because they've had to deal with someone who has loved them but hasn't liked them. And so how can we then begin to make those changes so that for those little ones, maybe they can grow up to have some strong emotional spaces to navigate, where they can recognize when they may love someone, when they may not like them, and how to be able to marry those two things together to be able to create healthy space for everyone. Thank you.